Hi, welcome to Write More Light. My name is Sarah with the Midwest Writing Center, and this is a web series. If you're not familiar with the Write More Light web series, here's how it goes. I give this little intro right here where I tell you about it. Then, depending on that day, I either interview somebody very cool and smart in the arts, or I give a short lesson on something to do with writing. So then after that, I give updates on the Midwest Writing Center and a writing prompt. So let's get into it. We're working on a series right now on teaching writing in the nonprofit world, in writing workshops or museums, wherever it is that you take classes or give classes, whatever that means to you. So last time we talked about writing lesson plans, and this time we're talking about pitching a workshop. We'll have another segment in which we talk about doing research in a more in-depth way than we did with lesson plans, because once you write your lesson plan and you move on to pitching, you're going to change your lesson plan depending on what you've pitched, who you've pitched, how the class turns out to look, stuff like that. And research is part of that. A shout out to Monica for this mug. So first and foremost, when you're going to pitch an org, make sure you read their website. They might not have all the information up there on how to pitch them. That happens. That's okay. They will have contact information for someone to ask. But if they don't, I hope you'll forgive the sips. I'm very, very sleepy. If they don't, this is a general, we can write this pitch and then change it for the org that we're trying to suit, the class we're trying to suit. I'm going to screen share. I think I'm going to screen share now. I hadn't really wanted to until later, but I think it makes sense to do it now. And the first thing is what the organization or the organizer wants to know. So you'll need the name of the class, a brief description, like 2 sentences, and then a longer description, however long it needs to be. I'm going to go ahead and screen share right now, so you can have a visual for this. Hopefully I'm still showing up on your screen when I share. So now I can't find the thing I wanted to share. So that's pretty silly and annoying. Thanks for bearing with me, friends. Okay. So what does the org want to know? I think we're a little bit frozen. My apologies. I don't know if you can see me. Hope you can. Name of class, brief 2-sentence description. There we go. A longer description. I would say this could be 1 to 3 paragraphs. You probably don't need to say everything. You certainly don't need to put your full lesson plan in here, but you want people to understand how it's going to look when you come to this workshop. So you'll say, for your brief description, you'll say something like, we're going to talk about how sensory details impact the flow of plot. Then in your longer description, you'll say, we're going to look at this writer and this writer. We're going to have discussions about, where these things show up in their stories, because the example I just made had plot, and usually that goes with fiction. Not going to say that that's universal. You're going to say, we're going to meet this many times and we're going to cover these different elements. That's all going in your longer description. Then you're going to say the format. Is it online? Is it hybrid? Is it in person? Is it in a classroom? Is it at a park? That'll depend on you. That'll depend on the org. Most places will do online or in person these days. Some places won't, so make sure you know who you're pitching. Some places, a lot of places won't do hybrid anymore because it's just an added workload. And then of course I talked in the lesson plan thing about the commuter course where it's asynchronous and you're giving lessons, they're responding, and it's not at the same time. Ideal number of students, a range. I know sometimes folks are going to say, what's the minimum? And if you don't have that number, we won't do the class. Sometimes that's the preference of the org, sometimes that's the preference of the teacher. Yeah, so that's why you want the range. The other end, of course, is how many students is too many. Then the last thing that I would put in this section, we're going to keep going with things that you should say that your organizer will want to know. But the last thing that really goes in this section is if you have a specific demographic to which you're teaching. If this is a kids class, if this is a women's class, if this is a queer class, if this is a retirees class, this is the time to say that. It should probably go in your descriptions as well. But I would also note it separately because that's going to help you, the organizer, the organization market, and it's going to help them say, okay, well, actually, we don't do classes for this population. Again, you want to know your org. Then you're going to do, okay, so any specific population you're targeting. Now, of course, that's not to say I want 20% of my students to be from Chicago and 25% of my students to be from Nashville. That's not how that works. And you shouldn't be targeting specific populations like separate to like have different statistics or something about your class. This is just if you're specifically teaching a class for children, for women, for people who share something with you or with the content you're teaching. I would, of course, advise against teaching something very specific to a population that you're not part of. I would say that you're probably not going to be asked to teach that class. And I would say that your students probably won't fully trust you. I'm not saying that's necessarily fair, but it is the way these things go. And it's also not unfair. Pricing is the next thing. You can have your own ideas about pricing. Sometimes orgs will have their own ideas about pricing, but you're going to want to say what you expect to be paid. At the Midwest Writing Center, we traditionally do a 50-50 split. So you say how much admission will be per person as the teacher, and then we split that. Half goes to the org, half goes to the teacher. We don't always do that. And if, the teacher wants a flat rate and then everything else beyond that goes to the center, that can be negotiated. This is all about you. Is it an hourly rate? Is it, what does the org normally do and what is your preference? For me, it really depends on what I'm teaching and with whom I'm teaching, the org and everything else involved. If I have to travel for the class, I'm going to ask for mileage. Yeah, stuff like that. That's definitely one though. Pricing is definitely one you want to say, either I have a strong boundary here and this is exactly how I will get paid, or this is how I prefer to get paid. let me know if there's something else you do at the org that you're writing, and we can work on it together. Probably if you ask for something they don't do, they'll let you know and they'll ask to negotiate. But and then skill level. Sometimes folks are like, this is an intermediate course, this is a beginner level course. I almost never teach anything with a specified skill level. I would very much prefer to work with whoever's interested. And folks with a lot of experience will take different things away from the class than folks with no experience. And I get questions about that sometimes at the Writing Center about like, who is this class for? Because I'm a beginner. And again, usually some teachers have preferences, and some classes are like, you have to know this much jargon to understand anything I'm going to be saying, and that matters. But for me personally, and again, usually at the Writing Center, we don't see people with skill level barometers on that. And if you believe yourself, especially in the arts, I think personally, if you believe yourself at blank skill level, like then you can self-identify there. You know what you're comfortable with as far as teaching and learning. So I personally don't cater to skill level. I don't think that I've ever taken a class that I haven't gotten something out of. So I have a hard time believing that, like, I've had classes that I've taken more than once, the same teacher with the same content, because I got so much out of it and I wanted to take it again. And, in the years between the two classes, I grew and changed. And so I did get different things out of it. These things happen. That's my spiel on skill level. Now here we go. Next topic, things to consider. I don't need to, I'm going to stop screen sharing for this. Okay, things to consider. The organization that you're working with or talking to will probably have guidelines on their website. They may not, but they probably will. If you're not sure, first really comb through their website and then probably comb through their social media too. They've probably had a call at some point for pitches, and in that pitch or in that call for pitches, they'll have information. Might be old. You want to look for it before you ask questions. Because if the information's out there and you're not finding it, it's just a little more professional. There's no harm. I would say there's no harm in talking to someone about what their organization's expectations are before submitting. You don't want to do it wrong. If you wrote me about it, I would be like, yeah, totally. Here's what we look for. But I would just do my homework before I sat down to write the email. So there's also some places will have a form on their website that's like, pitch your workshop here, or they'll say on their website, we're not taking pitches. So that's another thing to look for. What format do they want to receive pitches in? We take ours via email most of the time. Probably every time, but I don't want to speak in absolutes. But you don't know unless you know. Now for pitching a workshop, you need to know your audience, and your audience in this instance is the organization and or their board. I might pitch the list workshop I talked about in our last video to Iowa City Poetry, but I would pitch it as teaching list poems. I wouldn't pitch my class on sensory details in short prose to Iowa City Poetry. It's a prose workshop. Iowa City Poetry is not particularly prescriptive, but it is a poetry workshop, or it is a poetry organization, and that makes a difference. They're looking for poetry and poetic craft. Not all orgs are that way. Many orgs focus on, other forms, other genres, or no genre at all. So, look at, I was about to skip a step, so I'm going to rewind a little bit. You're going to want to, in order to know your audience, you're going to want to look into what they have hosted in the last year, maybe 2 years, especially since 2020. Things have changed a lot in these orgs, and they might be slowly going back to what used to be their normal. And they might have permanently, changed some things. It's hard to say. So you want to look back and look at a pretty good amount of history of what this org has done. What you're looking at should be who has taught there in the last year or so. What subjects have they taught? What are those workshops? It's possible they want to see more on a topic if they haven't seen it much. It's possible that their org gets a ton of attention for memoir, and they want to see more memoir from different people. So it's not necessary. It doesn't necessarily mean that you see something a lot and therefore they won't want it. And it's also not necessarily you see something a lot and therefore they'll take it. It's just really good to know their history, especially then when crafting your pitch. You can say, hey, I saw that you had this person teaching. I saw that you had Chuy Renteria teaching memoir. I am also teaching a memoir class. Mine is on craft. This is a memoir of my job in this life. And those have different audiences. They have overlap for people who are writing memoirs, but Chuy's memoir is coming of age, where my memoir is about my job. So they're different. They're very different classes, but it's good to say, like, yes, I see that you've done this a few times. Here's why mine is different. And also here's why it fits into what you're already doing. So then, also they know what you're doing, or they know, what they're doing. They know that you're invested. They know you're doing the research, and having any argument at all is a good plan. So I kind of already said this, but it's a separate note in my notes. If they recently had a poetry workshop on the Villanelle, it doesn't mean that there's no interest in a workshop on found poetry, for example. Now I just said, memoir and memoir are not necessarily the same, but I want to really drive that home. Having a specific form of poetry doesn't mean that another specific form of poetry would be counted out, because there's so much going on, especially in literary orgs. We understand how much there is to any genre in this case meaning poetry, prose, or hybrid, or something else. So we know how much there is in each area. So teaching a class on voice in fiction is different from teaching a class on plot in fiction, is different from teaching a class on point of view in fiction. Just like teaching brevity in poetry is different from teaching a villanelle, is different from teaching found poetry, is different from teaching limericks, and is different from teaching pantoums. There's just so much out there. And of course, voice comes into play, and alliteration comes into play, and on and on. There's just a ton out there. So something being similar should not ever preclude it being a possibility. And also, you may notice, right, if you're looking at Iowa City Poetry, they haven't had any prose workshops. That's because they probably aren't going to do prose workshops. I want to give a shout out to Iowa City Poetry since I keep mentioning them. They're wonderful. They're located in Iowa City. They do work around the Kranduk area, Cedar Rapids and Iowa City. Their director, Lisa Roberts, is a friend of the Writing Center and a really cool person who's really willing to work with anyone to make literature accessible. They also have a poetry lending library. They are worth visiting. I'm happy every time I do. Yeah, okay. So looking into recent work done by an org will help you understand the org better, so that when you write them, you can say, I already said a bit of this, but you can say, I'm so sorry I missed Melissa's mixtape workshop, and I think that my class will appeal to a similar audience. So I see that, I'm like, okay, about Melissa's mixtape workshop. That was about a year ago, and it was awesome. Shout out to Melissa Conway, who also read at our reading last week with Erica Lewis. It was incredible. But it also means that I now know I have an audience that will probably work with you. If you say you wish you had gone to this class and your workshop will work with a similar demographic. Now, if you're wrong, and I'm going to know, because I know what classes I've had, and I know what audience it's reached. And the mixtape class was pretty different from the other things that we've done. So if you're writing a memoir on craft, and if you're teaching a class on memoir of craft, and you're telling me that you're going to have a similar audience of Melissa's mixtape class, I'm going to think you're a liar. So don't lie. It's okay if you haven't taught before. I want to say that I know at least I have taken a chance on first-time teachers who have turned out wonderfully. I have been a first-time teacher, and it's scary, but if you know your ideas, you know your expertise, you know your content, you're going to be fine. And unless there's some weird stipulation within the place that you're trying to teach that says like no first-time teachers, you don't have to mention it. You don't have to mention it. If you have taught this specific class before, you can say that. You can say, I've taught this class at this place on this date and it went great. I'm thinking about how the same thing benefits us in today in this place. And I think it's useful. It's always a good time, right? It's okay to have a thing. But I don't want anyone to think that having never taught means that you can never teach. Everyone did it for the first time at some point. It's just true. If you know someone at the org, you can ask them to review your ideas and help you refine them. I wouldn't say you can just reach out to any org and do that. I am essentially offering that service right now, but I can't say that I'm available all the time to do this. But I do want folks to know, like, if you want to teach a class and you have a pretty good idea about it, but you're not totally sure if your lesson plans make sense or if it's too broad or too narrow. First, I mean, it's good to have writer friends because it's the same as workshopping anything, right? But if you know somebody at that org or who's taught at that org before, especially, that's a good person to ask for support on this topic, refining your pitch. If you know folks who teach writing classes or work for orgs in general, also cool, talk to your friends. And friends in general can be fine. Have friends, because you're really looking for someone to pitch ideas back and forth with. It would be nice, it would be ideal to have somebody who knows very intimately the process, but also it's just good to have somebody to help. So yeah, when you look at your lesson plans or have your friend look at them, is there anything that requires some advanced knowledge? Maybe, I don't actually have a good idea for this one. I didn't make a note of what advanced knowledge would be. But if you are teaching on if you're teaching diaspora writing, I just looked at my bookshelf to see what I have over here. If you're teaching diaspora writing, and you're opening it to any audience, but you want to make a note, like if you don't know what this word means, if this doesn't apply to your story, you'll want to include that in your description. If you need some advanced knowledge of diaspora cultures, put that in your description when you're writing your description. something that would have made more sense to say would be like 15th century poetic forms. If for some reason, like you need background info before you take this class, you need to be putting that in your description of the class. I can't imagine why I would need knowledge of 15th century poetic forms before taking a class at a writing org, but if that's your thing, if you're a scholar and you want to teach folks on what happened after those forms, then you want them to know in advance. That makes sense. You never know. I want to say at the Writing Center, we have accepted really short pitches and very detailed ones, but it is much, 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 much easier to market a long description than a short one. There have been times when, the most information I have is like, this is a poetry workshop. And then what I'm going off of is like the author's bio to sell it. And that's difficult. Generally speaking, if I had only, I want to teach a poetry workshop, I wouldn't expect that to be accepted. That's not much of a pitch, but, yeah, no, it's just so much easier to work with a description when you've got a lot of meat to it. So from your workshop description, I'm going to know who to invite to your class. I'm going to know what kind of prior knowledge I may need. I'm going to know what kind of formatting, what kind of resources I'm going to need if I have all those details. So here we go. We're going to do this together in real time. I'm going to be pretty vague. We're going to screen share. I'm going to be pretty vague because I don't have a workshop on my personal agenda to move forward with, but we're going to do it. Here we go. We want a who, my bio. We want a what, workshop title, short description. We want a when. That's going to be your availability. I would advise 6 weeks or more in advance availability. I say that because best practice is to advertise for 6 weeks. Where? That's your format again. That's online, hybrid, in-person, venue, etc. Why? People like this topic. My workshop is good. Sorry. Okay. Where can also be physical location, organization. Sorry, this should really be like how format, but where is sometimes useful. So that's like a sometimes. Cost and sing. Audience. This is experience level. Demographics. Target. Objective. And then make that sentences. So I would say bio is separate. So do that last. Bio is separate and should come after the workshop description. Then the workshop description will say, I knew this was going to be the thing that got me today. Title will be writing super short, okay, writing nonfiction vignettes under 500 words. Think of a jazzier title. I'm not good at that part. I can admit it. Not good at coming up with cool titles for things. Then in this weekly 4-session workshop, we will weekly work hybrid. In this weekly 4-session workshop, students will meet both in person and online to discuss the power of super short 4-session generative. I love generative workshop. Yours doesn't have to be generative, but this one that we're making up right now is going to be. Meet both in person and online to learn about the power of short works. We will review texts by Shorty McNonfic, Lewis DeTruth, and their peers. From these texts, we'll discuss where the power of brevity does its thing, etc. Students will come away from this workshop with a completed draft of a super short nonfiction, super short. Don't know what just happened there. Sorry, friends. Super short and powerful essay. With Sarah Elgatian. $30 person. Okay, cool. Then my bio. This is going to be a 3rd-person bio. It's super annoying to write these. I've been thinking about doing a Write More Light about writing the bio, but I don't think I could make it very long. Anyway, they're super annoying to write, but also they don't matter that much. I think we get really stressed out about them as writers because it's just awkward. Anyway, we're going to make this one up off the top of our heads. Sarah Elgatian is a writer and educator living in Eastern Iowa. She has been published in magazines such as Beholder, Anti-Heroin Chic, and I said magazine and now it's all ruined. Hybrid. She recently was featured in 10's September pieces and works at the Midwest Writing Center. I would say 50 words is ideal. Again, the org might have a description of what they want out of your bio. I would guess this is under 50 words. I would say 75 is a good happy medium. I wouldn't really go more than that. 24 words, definitely under 50. So when we're looking at these things that I want to include, here's my what, here is my who, here is my price. This should be everything else. It's a okay, here we go. It's hybrid. It's generative. The point is to learn this by doing this. And my objective is this. Then my bio. Now, when we're writing our email in which we're actually pitching our pitch, we're going to say something like, dear person at org, subject would be subject workshop pitch, say nonfiction, it's a short. So once I get that long, I don't want it to disappear from the subject line. So I'm going to say workshop pitch : short nonfiction, because I want them first and foremost to know this is a workshop pitch. I want to include what the pitch is about so they know before they open the email, but I don't want that to distract or potentially push the workshop pitch part off the screen. So dear person at org, below you'll find I am a fan of your organization, super cool writing org. Have enjoyed classes there with super cool writers who taught about topics I care about. I am writing with a workshop pitch today because I feel your organization is a great fit for the class I was prepared. I am an expert in this topic via my expertise. I'm excited to share it with your members because I am part of this community. Now, obviously, don't use this phrasing. It's good. It's not very good. It's very vague. I'm excited to share it with your members because I'm part of this community. It's not like a nice sentence. Something I might say in earnest. Yes. But not a good sentence. I'm excited to share it with your members because as a member, because as a member, I have gotten so much from my peers when working with your org. I believe they will believe the rest. I believe our community will be similarly interested in this topic. Doesn't have to be super deep, but you do want to say, I mean, if this isn't true, don't say it. A small org is going to know every name they've worked with for the past couple of years. But you can say, I'm a fan of your organization based on socials. I'm a fan of your organization because my friend went there, right? Just open it up friendly. Hope you're doing well. Love the work you do. Here's why I'm here. here's why I think you should care. And then below, you'll find my pitch, bio, and other details relating to my workshop. Hope this email finds you well. Look forward to hearing. All my best. Sarah Sarah Pants. There you go. That's the deal. Then hopefully they reply to you and say, received your email. We'll be reviewing it as a team. Get back to you as soon as we can. If they've read your pitch super closely, they'll also know your availability, which I did not include in that. Let's go back. Made all those notes for us, and then I didn't include that. That should go up here as well. My availability for teaching is Thursday nights after 4 p.m. for the foreseeable future. I am also open to Saturday morning. So what's funny about this is I'm never free either of those times. You know what? Since I said below, you'll find my pitch, bio, and other details pertaining to my workshop. I'm going to put it down here. You can include that in the workshop description too, but since that might change based on the org's availability, I wouldn't marry myself to it. Yeah, hope I hope this is helpful. Hope you're better reading my notes than I was at reading my notes. Yeah, if the Writing Center is somewhere that you're thinking about, you know how to find me. I'm the person running our socials. My email address is I'll drop it in the comments. I hope this was helpful. You obviously do not have to pitch to the Writing Center. There are tons of incredible orgs all over the place that deserve your love. But when you do pitch your workshop, let me know so I can come. I accidentally made myself full screen and now I can't see what I'm doing. Okay. So that's our Write More Light for today. Upcoming events at the Midwest Writing Center. Tomorrow is our last edition of Wednesday Night Free Writes for the year. I think that this is the first time I've said for the year this year. That's weird. So if you're a middle schooler or high schooler and you want to hang out with your peers who are writers, who are passionate about writing, you need a printer, you need Wi-Fi, you need some writing prompts, you want somebody to look over your work and give you feedback. We'll be there tomorrow, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Midwest Writing Center. Upcoming after that, first and third Saturdays of every month, we have Writer's Studio. That is online for the rest of the year. So that'll be on Zoom. The Zoom link is on our link in bio if you need that. Otherwise, you can write to us at the Writing Center for that link. I send out reminder emails the day before, but only to folks who ask for the reminder email. That is a workshop group in which there's a group of us, we give each other feedback, but we make sure that we're giving the feedback to the concerns you have about your piece and to help you get what you want from your piece. So we're not just sitting there telling you our taste and asking you to change your writing. There it is. Okay, November 11th. We are so excited. I knew that this was the biggest thing that I was forgetting, and it's the biggest thing. We posted an unboxing video yesterday. Shelley Moore Guy's new book, The Family Tree, comes out November 11th. We'll be having that release party at the Broadway in downtown Rock Island. So excited. This book is really incredible. It's been a long time coming. It's the true story of a family in the Quad Cities. Brothers, Black men, came from the South during the Civil War and served here in the 108th Infantry, sorry, and then settled their families here in the Quad Cities. It is a gorgeous story. Shelley Moore Guy is an incredible storyteller. It was illustrated by Gwen Patton, I think, who's an incredible illustrator. We're so excited for this book to come out. It's about it's nonfiction, it's about middle grade level, but I think it's suitable for a little younger and a little older. It's so good. You're going to see it in all of our schools and libraries here soon. That comes out November 11th. Hang out with us at the Broadway. As I almost forgot to give a writing prompt. Please forgive me. Today's writing prompt is opening my book to my writing prompt. Okay. For today's prompt, I want you to imagine that you are the size of a ladybug and you are walking around inside deep carpet. This can be a poem, a journal, a fiction, nonfiction, a comic, whatever it is that comes to you. Please give yourself 5 minutes to write from your perspective if you were the size of a ladybug walking through deep carpet. As always, please write more light into your life.